welcome back to the Bitcoin Business Bureau. I'm your host, as always, LitecoinLeader. I'm not in my normal setting because I just ended our an hour, 20-minute long AMA for CryptoConfidential. Fantastic discussion as always. But today I'm going to share an excerpt of that, of our opening, and just to give you an idea of not just what our AMAs are about, but also what the market perception is. We're going to hear from myself, we're going to hear from Patrick, and if I can work out the edits, I'm going to get some Omar in there too. So this is our view on the marketplace, and probably what you'll hear in the next 10, 15 minutes or so. It will cover almost everything you'd hear on other places on YouTube. I would challenge anyone to find something that's different that we didn't cover. So while we're not going to do technical analysis or charts, we're going to tell you what the market feels like, should look like, and where we're going to go. But all that comes up right next.
We have a bit of a different format today. We're going to go through a bit more information, structured information first, and then open it up for questions after. But if you have questions along the way, just put one in the chat or wave at us, and we'll go from there. So really good to see you all. And so Jeff, how should we kick off?
Yeah, so I don't know if everybody caught in the discussion. Let me go back up. So yesterday, a lot of us talked to each other a lot. So Patrick and I were talking a lot, and what we discovered yesterday was that we were having a great conversation that would probably be best to be shared, because about where we thought like Bitcoin and the general market was going to go. So we thought that we would you gotta mute everybody, but we would go and let's pause that conversation and just have it now. So I think that the best thing to do would probably be hand it over to Patrick to talk about where he thinks the market is probably heading, and then go from there. And then I'll do a rebuttal of things that I see, because you can really go both directions, and then we'll just kind of gravitate towards where we generally think things are going. But Patrick, why don't you share some of the things that you and I were talking about yesterday?
Well, considering you didn't allow me to share very much, and you were like, hey, let's pause and have this discussion tomorrow. I don't even know if we're really going to disagree. I don't even know why you think we're going to disagree if you don't even know what I'm going to say yet.
I don't necessarily think we're going to disagree. I think that we're going to bring two different vantage points. So I wanted to bring your vantage point of the 4-year cycle and discuss that and everything you're seeing and go in that direction. And then I'm going to present a counter argument.
Okay. So the way that we'll step back to Bitcoin mining, right? So mining Bitcoin, the way that the code is written, there's a halvening every 4 years. And we saw that happen, very regularly. It's been happening every 4 years. The network is working as expected. And you kind of get these 4-year cycles that come in, right? Like in 2018, when you saw this, what people were calling like a bear market, right? That's the first time I was like, oh, people are calling a bear market on Bitcoin. Why? I was like, do they not understand where Bitcoin is at? Like, do they not understand we just broke 16, 17,000? I remember driving across the mountain pass, and I had no reception, none at all. And Bitcoin was going up like $13,000, and it just kept going up and up. And you get to the other side of the mountains, and you don't even believe that you're mining this Bitcoin. And you go to the Bitcoin ATM, and your wife spits out cash, and she looks at you and goes, oh, this is real money. But that was like a little bit later, they're like, oh, it's a bear market. I'm like, guys, we were just at like hundreds of dollars. What are you guys talking about? Why is 16,000 such a bad number? Well, then, all of a sudden you get another halvening coming. And right before the halvening, you start seeing that prices catch up before the halvening. So it's almost like the market, is already expecting this decrease in supply, and they're preparing for it. So what you saw is a lot of miners who expected the price of Bitcoin to double as soon as the Bitcoin halved, but that's not what happened. When the halvening happens, there's this like natural, ebb and flow of a 4-year cycle where you see a pump 2 years or right there right before. And then after the halvening, right about 720 to 790 days, typically, we start seeing Bitcoin take that dump and start correcting again. All of that primes the pump before the next halvening. So again, then you're getting right into that 790 days before, almost like 2 years before, is where you start seeing a lot of this money come in. And then you saw the COVID dump, right? Which was a lot of people call the COVID dump, where you saw markets getting wrecked. But here we are in 2022, and we've got $30,000 Bitcoin. And I'm here to say that everything points that Bitcoin is strong. Bitcoin is not going anywhere. every kind of indicator that we use for technical analysis or adoption or use case, it's all pointing in many directions, which is favorable towards Bitcoin, including some of the technical analysis that you're seeing out there. It's indicating that we are really at a point where we expect things to pop back up pretty dang quickly. So the question comes down to, like, are you smart enough to understand that Bitcoin has a cycle, and can you wait to play it out? Bitcoin is not a get rich quick scheme. Bitcoin is a way to preserve your wealth. It's a way to get out of saving dollars in your 401ks and your bank accounts and having it be manipulated. It's a way to get out of these ridiculous projects that can be hacked, like Terra and Luna and that entire fiasco that happened. We need to get back to the beauty of Bitcoin. And the beauty of Bitcoin is it's really simple. Anyone can do it. You have a seed phrase. You store your seed phrase. You never share that seed phrase. You hold on to your Bitcoin for 4 years and then come back and talk and say you didn't do well. Because as far as I'm concerned, to this day, even today, while the markets are tanking, right? Like, we are seeing the Dow Jones go down, what, 1,100 points today, something like that, like ridiculous numbers that we haven't seen it do. And Bitcoin is holding at 29,000. So it's, you know, what I said last, 2 weeks ago is the last time we talked together. And we thought that maybe people were thinking maybe Bitcoin's going to go up from here. And I said, well, the reality is we could see it test at 29. And that's what happened today. And I'm not saying that it's done. I think that we have a lot of room for sideways consolidation within the next, let's say, 3 to 6 months, maybe even past August, maybe even through the midterm elections. We'll see some weird stuff happening, but I'm not looking at 6 months or a year. I'm looking at 3 years down the road, because that's my cycle. 4-year cycles. I play those numbers, and I just don't see it coming down at all. It just matches what we're seeing. This is normal Bitcoin behavior.
Okay, so I agree and I disagree at the same time.
Start with where you disagree so I can argue back quickly.
Okay, so okay, well, now I was going to go the opposite direction, but the disagreement, I disagree with the 4-year cycle. I think that if you go back, the 4-year cycle has been a pattern, but we've only had 3 patterns of it. And every pattern has changed over the last 4 years. So 4 years ago, we did not have countries that adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. We did not have ETFs. We did not have the hash rate that we do, that we didn't have this supply demand that we do. We didn't have 44 countries meeting with the leader of El Salvador looking at adopting Bitcoin. So we have a lot of different things now. Like, we didn't have DeFi. We have lots of different things now that we didn't have 4 years ago. So I would challenge that, like, history often repeats itself, but it does certainly rhyme. So and I probably screwed that one up, but it's the 4-year cycle from the past 4 years even isn't going to match the next 4-year cycle. So you're looking at that historical perspective of trying to take that fractal and map it onto 2022 from 2018. I don't think that's a good plan. But as far as the bigger perspective, we all know that Bitcoin is going to go up because fiat is done. It's terrible. We all, like, everybody's getting wise to the game that the central banks are manipulating the system. Fiat is not the answer. Then there's going to be at some point a rush to crypto and a rush to precious metals, because it's the only 2 safe havens that most people see. Some people are arguing for real estate. That's also a manipulated market. So
yeah, you kept saying 4-year cycle. So how can you disagree with a 4-year cycle when you keep saying 4-year cycles? There's a 4-year cycle that we currently have been seeing every 4 years since the launch of Bitcoin.
Would you agree that 2018 is a lot different than 2022?
Yes.
Okay. That's why I challenged
the 4-year cycle. I wouldn't say it's a lot different. I'd say the conditions are significantly different. You are so correct when you say that, you know, that there's a lot of countries coming in, and we're seeing banks now who are going to start holding crypto. Like, they're the ones who are making fun of us. Like, literally, these are the people that were telling me that I was doing something illegal and I was somehow, like, contributing to children getting trafficked. And I'm sitting here going, I'm sitting in a warehouse by myself with my wife and a bunch of machines. I don't relate to what you're saying at all. So at the end of the day, we're sitting here going, now banks are going to hold your crypto. So first of all, why would you want that, guys? The beauty of Bitcoin, right? Let's get back to the beauty of Bitcoin. Hold your own keys, hold your own coins. That's the beauty of Bitcoin. And again, these tools that we talk about leveraging your Bitcoin, don't always over leverage. You know, I don't want to get off the path, but there are 4-year cycles, Jeff, and I see it. what the next few 4 years are going to look like, I believe they will look different than the previous 4 years, but I still believe that the conditions of supply and demand are going to take impact, like significant impact, as the curve flattens out, as this next halving comes down to 1.75 Bitcoin for each miner. You guys, like, we are talking about fractals of numbers than what was happening, 8 years ago.
Yeah, that number is the inflation rate, 1.6 something or 1.5 something. It's because I think we're at 6.25 now per every 10 minutes. Now we're going down to 3 and change, like 3.1, 3.125. But I agree and I disagree. I agree. Yes, we have a 4-year cycle that's prescribed in the code of Bitcoin. We're gonna have a halving every 4 years. So yes, there's gonna be a 4-year cycle. There'll be supply shock. People will catch up. Prices will catch up. But everybody focuses on like that's just the nature of economics. They focus on the fiscal quarter. They look at only 3-month periods, if that. They don't look at the bigger picture. That's not an element of the Western world. The Far East, they look hundreds, decades at times. But Bitcoin, yes, I agree. I think we all agree. In 4 to 10 years, Bitcoin is going to be astronomical. We don't know what the number is going to be. We don't know what's going to be in a given date. It's heading to $1 million per Bitcoin. We don't know when that's going to happen, but we all can agree that it's going to happen at some point. The question is, what does $1 million buy at that point, and what is that time frame? That's the only point I'm trying to make, is that there's 3 directions it can go: sideways, up, or down. And we can speculate all weekend, but it gets back to commandment number 10. You need to have a plan for all 3 of those directions, because we don't know in the short term what the manipulation is going to do. We don't know everything screams right now Bitcoin should be going up. Everything screams that. All the indicators that it should be well over $100,000 today, but it's not. So the question, we can all ponder why. We could probably speculate 10 different reasons why pretty easily, just off the top of your head, just from what we talked about in the last 5 minutes. But the thing is that we don't know where it's going to be 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now. But we have a much stronger feeling of where it's going to be 2 years from now, or 4 years, or 8 years. That's the difference. So this is a long-term plan. It is not while we do give updates on portfolios every quarter, or actually every month, the difference is that we don't know the short-term answer, but you need to plan for both situations, because any one of them can materialize in the short term. Short term is the hardest thing to predict.
I'll even add a little bit more to that. And I actually did mean like 1 3/4 Bitcoin, because right now the miners are, again, like you said, getting roughly about 6, but most of them aren't pricing in 6. Most of them are getting ready to price in another reduction here. So they're looking at their hash rate right now, all depending on what's going to be happening in a year. Most of them are making decisions right now whether or not they're going to invest significant capital into other miners that are going to be antiquated here within the next 7 months to a year, right before a halving. The price is already starting to take impact, and miners are already thinking about the next reduction. So when you're 4 years from now, you're going to be thinking 1.75 Bitcoin per block.
Right, and that's an important perspective, because the miners, they have sunk cost. They're buying the miners. That's capital expenditure, capex, that they have to spend, and they're gonna burn through those miners. As long as they can use them, they'll keep running them to get whatever Bitcoin they can out of them. So that is a capital decision, and they do look at that time frame. So that is a good point. But like I said, I think we're basically done with the debate. I think we can pretty much open up to questions. And I actually have a question for Omar, and I've been trying to figure this out as well. And I know he just opened up his mic. But Omar, I've been trying to figure out all these markets, all these economic markets. I'm looking at bond market going down, the stock market's going down. Everything is heading downward. Where do you see the liquidity moving to? Where's the money going?
Yeah, good question. I think before I answer that, in regards to where Bitcoin is and where it's going now, we should never forget that Bitcoin, I think right now, is about 500 billion, $500 billion market cap in its current price, give or take. That means literally 2 hedge funds can dump the market, or spike the market. So you've got to remember that Bitcoin as an asset class is still tiny. It's tiny. It's infinitesimally small compared to other assets in the world. When Bitcoin gets to about $1 million, at that point, manipulation is much harder, because somebody with bigger pockets, you need much bigger pockets to do anything. So don't freak out, as what Patrick said. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. But this is where I think, Jeff, you said it ages ago, prices versus value. All we're doing here is betting on the fundamentals of the right asset because of the conditions we're living in at the moment. So when there's a big enough trigger point, maybe that's the halvening, I don't know, Patrick could be better at answering that. But whatever the next trigger point is for money to flood into Bitcoin, that's when price will rally. Every market, not every, but most market crashes in history, they always tank together. There's always an immediate correlation to the downside before there's an upside. So if the stock market is crashing now, most people will liquidate and go to cash. Gold usually goes down when the stock market initially crashes. Most assets go down because people want to free up money so they've got money to buy groceries and all that kind of stuff. Where is the money going? There's a lot of balloons that are going to pop here: real estate debt, student loan debt, derivatives debt. There's the bond market, and the size of the bond market is massive compared to the stock market and compared to Bitcoin. When that kind of liquidity from institutions starts going, well, hang on, it's better served in something like Bitcoin compared to asset class A, B, and C over here. That's when I think, we're going to get towards the $1 million mark. From right now, Bitcoin is totally retail. Even an institution, think about it this way. BlackRock, I think, as much as we hate them, I think they've got $13 trillion under management. That one company is, what's that? 30 times bigger than the Bitcoin market. Totally. One company. There are thousands of institutions with money like that can't get into the market. And this is how big institutions think. Bitcoin is still too small for the big guys to get in. When it goes up in price, that's when the big guys will actually dump more money in it because they can. If you work in a trading desk right now at a big firm and go, I want to put 1% of our portfolio in Bitcoin, it's not about the investment. It's about, can you get in and out? They've got so much money that they can't do it. That's the problem. So yeah, I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but step number one is people always flight to safety. That's cash. The problem right now is people think Bitcoin's going down. They don't realize that the US dollar's lost 20% in value every year on year for God knows how long now. And it just continues to go down in purchasing power. When institutions are allowed to, it's not that they don't want to, but when they are allowed to and can move money into Bitcoin, that's when I think it's really, really going to spike probably to $1 million. I don't really see it a problem going from here to 100,000 or 200,000. I think that would be pretty easy just in the retail market. But when finally the doors open up for big money, yeah, I think that's when but I'll round it out with one thing. Here's what you can't do. I'm sure we've all learned this, but you can't time it. The speed in which the last bull market in Bitcoin, Patrick, maybe you know this, I think it was like a period of like 90 days, 90 or 120 days, where it went from that last bull run up, where it went from, I can't remember the low, up to the 60,000. If you were trying to time it and wait, you would have probably missed out, because when it went up so fast that you would have totally missed the boat. So the whole point is that you need to have your preservation, you have your capital allocated, not trying to time it, just know that you are in the right asset class. And when it does happen, you're already on board. You don't want to try and get in when it's already going up too hard.
Yeah, right. I agree. Timing the market, guys, is a terrible strategy. Dollar cost averaging in is always, proven to win over time. And that's why we talk about time, because it's just proven to work over time. Dollar cost averaging, it works. Trying to outsmart the market usually loses for most people because it doesn't work that well.
All right, I took a lot of notes on both of your answers, and I'm going to follow up with a couple of things, then we can open up for questions. So just really going real quick. First off, a rule of thumb that I have of when Bitcoin is 50,000, it's $1 trillion, roughly speaking. So you can just figure out the market by multiplying by 50. That's a tough one. When Bitcoin is 100,000, it'll be a $2 trillion market. When it's 500,000, it'll be equivalent to gold at about a $10 trillion market. So just some numbers, but 50K equals 1 trillion for market cap of Bitcoin.
Can I jump in right on that, please, Jeff?
Sure.
This is really good to give you perspective. So 50,000 is $1 trillion market cap. The foreign exchange market per day does around 3 to 4 trillion per day turnover. The SWIFT system does multiple trillions per day. So Bitcoin, even at $1 trillion, infinitesimally small. So it needs to get to $1 million to 5 million, 10 million before it'll be a serious asset class.
This is a great conversation. I'm glad. I know where you're going to extend, and we're going to have questions, just so you know we're going to extend a little bit of time. But we just thought this was a really good topic that everybody wanted to hear, so we just wanted to lead off on it. So also about the point about being too small. Totally agree. There are rules for investment funds that they can't invest in certain things unless they're at a certain market cap size, because they'll be too influential by investing in those things. So really, anything beyond Bitcoin, even Ethereum, those are about the only two that you can touch. And then after that, it's too small for especially the big boys like BlackRock, Vanguard, the names. Grayscale can give you an idea, but they're not too big yet because they're not a big fund. They're a big player, but not just in crypto. Crypto is a smaller market. A couple other things, the dollar, the flight to the dollar. I think that's where the money's headed. I think Omar kind of said that's pretty much matches. If you look at the Dixie or DXY, that's close to an all-time high. It's reaching another peak again. But that's probably the best mechanism to say that a lot of the money is flying to cash right now. It's because everything's being pulled out, but you got to look at what's being pulled out. The stock market is down, 20%. Crypto's down 20%. Real estate's even down a little bit. So all that money is sitting on the side and is looking for a place to go. It has not gone into permanent precious metals yet. It hasn't really gone to many other places. It hasn't even gone into a foreign market yet, even with a dollar strong. So there's dollars sitting there waiting to attack and go after something. We just don't know where it's going to go yet. So the timing is the hardest part to pick. And a lot of people have been talking about how Bitcoin matches NASDAQ lately. And I don't know what the time frame is, but they're very well correlated. That's just, there's speculation as to why. A lot of people, that's a perspective. So sometimes perspective matches narrative. And people is like, well, they're treating Bitcoin like another tech stock. But at some point, they're going to decouple. And that's when things will start to go ape again, and it'll just moon. So that's where things will happen. And then I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. Oh, and last thing about timing the market. I don't remember the exact figures, but I think it's somewhere around 30 days in the life of Bitcoin. If you miss those 30 days of those big gains, you would have lost like 80% of all Bitcoin's gains, something crazy like those numbers. So that's why you can't time the market, because you just don't know when those days are going to occur.
Another thing on cash is it's good to point out as well, in America, there's more American dollars outside of America than there are inside of America. There's more US debt out of America than inside America. So the entire world uses currently the US dollars as a trading currency, because that's currently what it is on the reserve currency. There's so much debt outside of the world for that to pay up. The US dollar is actually going to get stronger and stronger, at least in the short term, relative to others. Does that mean fiat is good? No. Does it mean inflation doesn't make it lose value? No. All I'm saying is the world has all these fiat currencies, and the US dollar is kind of like Starbucks. It's the best of the worst coffee you can get. Currently US dollar is the best of the worst fiat currencies out there. That's why a lot of the flight money or safe money will probably go to the US dollar before anything else.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about that, look up Brent Johnson's dollar milkshake theory. That's the main theory that's out there that talks about this. And I think we heard him at Mark Moss. I've seen Brent a lot, but he does have a blind spot for crypto, as do most of these people. Like, everybody's got their own blind spot. I mean, but he makes a strong case for the dollar going up, but he doesn't talk much about crypto. It's a smaller market, but he makes a strong case. But there's a lot of things to me. Look at the narrative, like the dollar is getting stronger internationally, but there's a lot of more transactions that are done outside the dollar now than there used to be. The SWIFT system is more the euro than the dollar, and more transactions across the globe are done outside the dollar than inside the dollar. That wasn't the case 5 years ago. So, but there's also agreements that have been out there for 10 or 20 years with bonds that you have to pay back in the native currency. So if you took a European bond, you have to pay back in euros. If you took a US bond, you have to pay back in US dollars. That's why the Treasury wants to sell US dollars to Japan or other countries, because then they basically were exporting our inflation. They haven't been buying them. The Treasury's been buying their own dollars. That's why the inflation has come home to roost. That's why it's still here. The dollar is eventually going to find their way back to the US as less and less are used overseas. So I know this was a lot to open the show or the discussion, but let's go. I think, Omar, let's walk through some questions, but I think that was a great topic to start off on. So there you have it. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you someday on Crypto Confidential. The link is right down below. It was also on the, I'll put it everywhere. CryptoConfidential.news is the place to find us. I hope to see you there. And again, if you join and you become an affiliate, which is very easy to do, I can certainly tell you how to become one. And you get 2 people to sign up underneath of you. It pays you back for your entire subscription for the year. And then you get all the knowledge for free. So much like when you buy a coin and it doubles and you sell half, not financial advice, but you get your coins for free. But now you can get your Crypto Confidential for free too. So we hope to see you there on the next AMA in just 2 weeks. So more to come. Until then, I'm going to wrap up for the week. Call it a week. Let's close the drawer on the bureau. Say follow leader one last time, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.